Here we go. Here we go. Little drum roll for episode 5, season 2 of Men the Mind. We appreciate y'all jumping back in with us. We have some uncharted territory today. First of all, let's clear the air. We have a 3-time guest. The quality has just always been so good. The content, the conversation. Mr. Seth, welcome back for a 3rd time. We are super happy to have you. And then we also got our guy Sam, who is rocking with us today. We are looking forward to some awesome conversations. So again, this is episode 5, season 2 of Men the Mind. Nikki D, let's give the people the topic. Let's get into it.
Yeah, this one's going to be, I think it's going to be fun. I say that about everything. But I wanted to bring up the idea, the classic saying that you can teach a man to fish or you can give him the fish that you've caught. And usually when this is used, the idea is you want to teach the man to fish. You want him to be able to go and do it and produce for himself. And I'm wondering if we actually jump in with that, do we buy it? What if we change the number? Do you want to teach multiple people to fish, or is that one-on-one more efficient? And are there any situations where it is better to bring the dinner to the table? And that's really all I got. So initial thoughts on that.
Initial thoughts, like when we first talked about this being a topic, in my head I was like, man, that's easy. Like I want to teach these people to fish all day, right? I don't want to be, in my head I see it as a crutch, and maybe it's a reflection of the way I grew up a bit and what I saw in the household and how I saw bringing the dinner to the table or feeding someone is I'm just expecting this meal. I don't maybe necessarily have to work for it. I'm gonna be here. The meal's gonna be here. Versus if somebody teaches me to fish, maybe I can be the resource and I can help other people. And it's funny that the timing of this. I looked at something on Instagram earlier, and it was a college coach talking about recruiting, and he said there are kids who are hungry, and then there are kids who just want to eat. So same premise, right, that you just brought up, Nick, talking about kids who are hungry. Kids who are hungry are gonna, if they have to make a spear, they're gonna go out, and he used this kind of caveman-like reference, make a spear, go out in the wild, set traps. They're gonna work hard. They're gonna run as long as they have to catch their food to get their meal. Versus those who just want to eat, they'll eat at anybody's table. Right, they'll sit down with any group of people. They'll surround themselves with maybe people who aren't the best for them, or the meal that's not the best for them, and they simply want to eat, and they want the kid that's hungry. So those are my initial thoughts. Like I want to teach people how to go get it, so they can do for themselves and hopefully pass that along and do for others.
Yeah, love that.
We coming hot right off rip. All right, we starting it hot today.
What do we got over there?
I'll go next. So as the people might know by now, I come at these topics from maybe a tiny bit of a different angle. One, the sport. I think we all have sport in common. But another one is maybe like leaning a bit more into the academic piece, because that's the piece that I'm still involved in. And Nikki D, at the very beginning, you said, do we want to teach a lot of people how to fish, or do we want to focus on the individual? And right now in my academic career, I think what I'm finding is that focusing on the individual is a bit more important to me. And I'll tell you the reason why. Literally, it is the reason why. What is someone's why for wanting to fish? In the analogy, teaching someone how to fish, obviously they need to fish because they need to eat and they need to live. In academia, people have different reasons for wanting to get their education. But at this stage, for me, well, even at the undergrad stage, people have all these different reasons, and they're not all the same. And having that individual focus for people is really important, so that when you are teaching them how to fish, whatever that fish might be, it is something that's truly applicable to them, not other people in the classroom, if we're talking about it from a class standpoint. But for me, it's my supervisor. My supervisor is my supervisor because he knows what my fish is, what my outcome is, and he's the one that's going to help me achieve it. I'll stop right there. There's an alarm going off. I need to fix it, and I'm so sorry.
You're good. You're good. We'll let Sam rock out for a minute.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like, kind of building off of that, I think connecting the two pieces is kind of like a teach the teacher moment as well. So, understanding that you want to make an impact on someone, and when you are teaching them how to fish, maybe giving them a way to teach others, like teach in their own words. I know with the coaching experience, so a lot of the times I'll teach kids things and they don't know why I'm teaching it to them, and I have to kind of take a step back and realize they may not have all the knowledge I have, and they may need to understand the bigger picture. And sometimes it's understanding that the reason why, kind of like Seth said, that why can be just as important as the methods as well.
Yeah, no, and I think you bring up a really good point with the teaching to teach thing. I think the impact you're trying to drive matters so much. If you are trying to teach as many people as possible, then having a hierarchy where you teach and train people to go and teach and train is going to obviously impact the most number of people. But to Seth's point, the quality might matter given the context. And that's where my head went as well. If I enjoy doing something and it's not a burden, I lean towards bringing the food to the table, if you will. It feels a little bit more effortless to me and I get joy out of it. So why not? But if I am trying to really raise the impact and it's not something that I sustainably want to do forever or want to grow that impact, then I go a little bit more towards the teaching. But while Seth was talking, I was actually thinking about it in the sense of sales. And when you have a sales relationship, you definitely lean to that one-on-one in a lot of ways, but you could have a conference, right, where you give a teach and try to sell to a lot of people. And that's an interesting dynamic too, because both have pros and cons, but I'd say if you're selling me something, I want that individualized piece.
I have a book here. Start with why. I really wanted to talk about the word why while we were here. And this is a book, I'll be honest, I read it a while ago. However, there are three words that I took away from it: what, how, and why. And essentially what this book says, Simon Sinek is his name if you want to look this up. Is that
awesome author?
Yeah, he has some great works, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Things that are extremely applicable, like start with why. That's such a broad title that everyone can relate to because we all have purposes. We might not know exactly what it is. We're all working towards something. And here, let me back up. That's what he says. People, organizations, and people, they know what they are doing. I am running. I don't know, whatever it is. I am making this product. Also, most organizations, not all of them, know how to do what they are doing. Oh, I know how to run. I know how to put one foot in front of the other. I know physically how to manufacture this product. But what Simon says is that not many organizations, people know what their why is. And he has this little like target with what on the outside, how in the middle, and then why in the very center, because we need to start with why. We need to know what our why is to then move forward. And bringing it back to the like teach a person how to fish. We want to teach them how to fish in a way that resonates with them. And by knowing your purpose for fishing, it gets people to realize like, okay, yes, I do need to fish. I do need to do something this way in order to achieve what I want to achieve, whatever that outcome is.
Right.
For someone like me, like hopefully my supervisor can tell me, hey, like we really need you to, like pump out this research or something. Like we need you to do research. But what is your why for doing research? Well, I'm really interested in this topic. It's hopefully something that people, athletes, in my case, can benefit from knowing, and coaches, practitioners, whoever it might be. And then if I have a really solid understanding of what that why is, it's going to carry me into hopefully a job, if there are jobs open. But it will carry me into a job, and then I will at that stage know what I'm doing and can hopefully continue to do my research, benefit society, not curing cancer, not by any stretch of the imagination, but I'll at least know my why and the reason why I'm doing it, and I will know how to fish at that point. And it's so hard to do. That's another note that I wrote down about this topic of teaching a person how to fish, was that it starts from the very beginning. Teaching in general, I mean, literally like when we are kids, we start school, like actually official school, when we are like extremely young. We're only a couple years into knowing or remembering things. And that's the same here when we're teaching someone how to fish. It's like, okay, we need to start from the very beginning. Like, what is a fishing pole? Why is it shaped like this? You know, where do we fish? That sort of thing. And how long you need to practice patience. That's another part of it. But it all starts from the beginning. There's a lot of different things that build on each other to then you, in the end, becoming a successful fisherman, a successful researcher, a successful athlete, whatever the case may be.
No, I love that. I think there's also an element when you have something, like you said, you know what you're doing at work, you know kind of the direction that you're headed, and you know some of the basics, right? That can be detrimental in some ways too. I was reading, we've touched on this a little bit in one of the other episodes, but Think Again from Adam Grant. There's a section where he starts talking about sports fans. And it's like, you know, you have a Yankees fan, you have a Red Sox fan. How much do you have to pay them to boo their own team? And how much do you have to pay them to cheer for the other team? And it costs more to get them to cheer for the opposite team than to boo their own team. Same thing with Michigan, Ohio State for Mike. I'm sure it's the same thing with your division rivals for the Packers, Sam. Very similar for everybody for Florida State. I'm sure you're not dying to cheer on Miami. And that's, I think it's an interesting piece when you tie it into the why, you know, like I know I don't like Alabama as an Auburn fan. I don't necessarily have a complete conceptualization of why I don't like Alabama and why I hate them so much, but I'm willing to double down that I'm not cheering for them. And I don't know, I mean, you could have that with fishing, but using it as an analogy more for life, I think that adds a nice little.
Yeah, I have another piece. Sorry, I'm talking too much here. I recently, since my last time on the pod, I had a very large moment in my life, and especially my academic life, but also just in general. So in my program, there is this thing called the comprehensive examination. Sounds super daunting. You should be super scared when you hear something like that. And boy, was I. And so it's a process that started in April. But essentially what happens is your supervisor's like, hey, we need to do this. Like, in order for you to graduate, this is something you need to do at the end of your first year. And it looks like this. You have 2 topics of your choosing. They surround things that are related to your dissertation. And you get these questions or prompts that have to do with that topic. And you're given 2 months to answer that question or respond to that prompt. But you're not given much direction after that. They don't give you a list of articles. You aren't allowed to talk to your examiners that are for each of these topics. You aren't allowed to talk to your supervisor is not allowed to coach you through it. But they do give me the direction of these prompts. So in a way, they didn't really teach me anything. I taught myself, but I was given guidance, which I guess could be considered a form of teaching.
Yeah.
So yeah, kind of going back to what I was saying of like, okay, yeah, it starts from the beginning, but like you need to keep on going and teaching them. And that's how you really get this to stick. I guess I'm kind of going against the grain with what I was just saying because that's not what happened. But I do find that this process, after these 2 months, boy, did it suck. I mean, it was, oh my God. I felt like I couldn't really think straight because I was just so into this literature and writing these papers that were the outcome of it. And then I had to defend it. But I taught myself, really. But I was given the guidance by people that are experts in these topics. But also, I mean, that could go extremely wrong. Let's assume they give me these prompts and I do not answer them properly. Let's just say I go off the deep end in a direction that I was not supposed to. I end up failing these comps, not learning anything about how to effectively read research, understand research, and then apply it through this paper, which I had to like give future directions and stuff like that. Then what did I really learn? I just crapped away 2 months of my life. So that's also, I guess, giving another perspective where we have Nikki D kind of coming at it from a salesman lens a little bit there. And then just another perspective, still in the academic realm, but how teaching a person to fish could also result in not teaching them how to fish, even though that was the main purpose in the first place.
Yeah, and I think that's valid. I think how you go about teaching them to fish does matter. Definitely plays a role. Because how many times in parenting do you see something that's pushed down, parents really care about it, and then the kids resent it because it was taught the wrong way, right? Kind of exactly what you're getting at. I am curious what Sam's thoughts are with that and with kind of a multitude of people from like a coaching perspective or anything like that. I know you've got a little bit more experience in that realm.
Yeah. So every time you guys have kind of talked about this, the question that keeps popping in my mind is like, why have teaching styles changed so much? Coaching styles changed so much. So, like, I'll talk to some of my kids, some of my athletes, and they'll tell me about like this new way of learning. They'll tell me about the new math, the new discussion boards, and I'm always wondering why, just in a matter of 5 to 10 years, so much has changed since I was in high school. And I'm curious what your guys' thoughts are on what has driven the change. I guess I know I'm asking a question to answer a question. I apologize, but like, what's driven that change in teaching and coaching?
I think that's a good question, and the first thing that comes to mind for me as I think about some of the athletes that I work with, whether they are on my team or they're kids from around the city, is that we now have recognized, I'll say, how many different learning styles there are. Right? There isn't this cookie cutter learning style where, and we probably heard it a lot. And I can't tell you the last time I heard, and I think that speaks to why things are how things have changed. The my way or the highway approach, right? That my way or the highway approach is this is the cookie cutter. You're gonna get in this program. This is how we're doing it. And if it doesn't work for you, then you can bounce and go find somewhere else that works. Well, now I think we have coaches who are more knowledgeable, who are willing to put in a little extra time, who are willing to develop programs that fit specific groups. I don't think we need, or I don't think there will be a case where we have 7 different programs that are needed, but maybe 3, right? Or maybe 4. And you can come up with 3 or 4 different programs or teaching styles to make it so that, I won't say just kids, but people in general can receive information better. And I know we've talked about it on past episodes. The first conversation, or one of the first conversations Nick and I had, I asked him straight up, Nick, what is your learning style? Like, how do you learn best? How do you receive information? Because at that point, that was a developmental piece in my leadership journey of recognizing and being able to help people receive information better, or help me give them information better in a way that's digestible to them. So I think it's a matter of just times are changing and people recognize that, and they're willing to make those changes to have better programs, to have better connections with kids, with families, with people, whoever their target audience is. I think that's probably the biggest thing. At least that's what pops in my mind for sure.
Yeah.
I like that
I would
a lot.
double down on that. Oh, no. What do you got?
I was just going to connect it because I like what Mike said a lot about the fact that he asked you what your learning style was. And I think one thing that I have struggled with the most in coaching, and I wish, tying it back to Seth's background in academics, I wish there was like an assessment you could give each kid like at the beginning of the season, because I'll teach things, or I'll give kids things, and some of them will ask questions, and they're really good questions, but I get almost a bit frustrated because it feels like I've given them the answer, but they may not have learned it because my style might not align with theirs. So I think that's a really good point, Mike, that each kid has got one place you got to meet them at, which is just really cool to see. So.
Yeah.
One trend that's been coming about this time with, I guess, the pod has been references to books. I think it's exponentially increased since last season. And I'm going to throw 2 more in the mix. Haven't read either of these. I've heard a little bit of the rundown on it, but I think it's going to help answer some of the questions. I think both of you guys are correct. We have so much more understanding of teaching styles. And part of the reason we've gained this understanding is because the default style of generations previous, over multiple generations, has failed to produce sustainable individuals that want to learn. And in the past, there's been almost like a natural selection sort of thing, right? Like the American dream is built on, you're going to be hungry and you're going to be humble and you're going to get it done, like Mike was talking about with someone who's learning, right? That works really well until everybody's burnt out and anxious and doesn't want to do anything.
Right.
And the issue we're going to jump to, and Alex would eat this up, this is a book recommendation from him actually, is it's like the coddling of the American mind. It's a really interesting book from my understanding, because it doesn't necessarily take a strong side one way or another. It simply says the past generations have been really bad. Where we're at currently is also going to be really bad. We need to find the middle ground, and we need to find what's going to work. Because right now we've gone from everybody super anxious and isn't hungry and nobody wants to do work, right? You hear that from the older generations because they're norms, not right or wrong, just what it is. And then you also have the younger generation that's like, that's not my job. I don't feel like I need to do that. And maybe that anxiety is preventing some of that. And so the solution in part has been learning about these different teaching styles and trying to find it. This is one that I just picked up. Shout out Prime Day, right? But it's the Anxiety Generation. I don't know if you guys have heard of either of those books. Apparently this is like top this year in the psych realm, or one of them for 2024. So I'm excited to pick that one up too. It had really good reviews.
I would like to add a little bit to this topic of like learning styles and teaching styles, coaching styles changing. And I guess I want to first build on Mike. He was the one that answered the question first. But I think one of the reasons why times are changing is sort of like a trial and error sort of thing.
Yeah.
We were doing things a certain way, and it's like, oops, yeah, maybe that's not the best way that people.
Right. That's a good point.
So just today, I was involved. I listened to a seminar, and it's by an education professor here at my university. Dr. Ardavan Izadarad is his name, and he does a lot of work in social justice in education, and he has a lot of experience working in some of the some neighborhoods in Toronto. And I think the way that he approaches teaching is so interesting. That's very applicable to coaching as well. And it kind of goes along with this like trial and error where you're the coach, it's my way or the highway, like Mike said. And that sort of mindset, my way or the highway. And let's say you have an athlete who's not taking well to the coaching. That coach might ask that athlete, what's wrong with you? Because you assume that, or the coach assumes that their way is right. So like, why aren't you kind of following?
That's really good.
And where we're shifting to, where we had the trial and the error, and now let's see where we can let's see if this one works. Essentially, if we want to boil it down to just a few words, is now asking what happened to you. It doesn't need to be like something like violent or anything, like not like that, but just like, what is your history? It could be as simple as asking, what is your learning style? It could be asking like, how have people coached you in the past?
Mm-hmm.
Those kind of questions. What happened to you? And then the coach would then take that. And hopefully these coaches nowadays, like Sam, I'm sure you're a great example of this. And maybe you can take it from here. But it's like the coach really understanding who their athletes are, what are their strengths, what are their weaknesses. It puts more on the coaching or the coaches to actually like do that work beforehand. But like I said, this sort of thing, it starts from the very beginning. And maybe you need to have those conversations with athletes, or like in counseling or like sports psychology, like with the motivational interviewing, like let's get all the information out of these people at the very beginning, and then they will almost provide the answers to our questions. Oh,
right.
How do you learn? Nick,
right.
I'm a visual learner, or whatever it might be. And then boom, like you have, okay, so next time we meet, I'm going to use something visually because he said it would work well for me.
I like that a lot. This is going to be so fun because I think everybody said the different learning styles now. I was having a conversation with one of the like level 4s. Sam's probably the only one that's got that, tracking that in our company. But really well versed with the research, really likes to keep up with some of the pop psych stuff as well. And I guess the research suggests that there's not one learning style that you actually learn best through. Like, we're all very open to multiple, and multiple tends to be the best way to do it. However, there is one that you're going to be most comfortable and confident with. And then it's like, does that self-efficacy like pile on and make that something that you perform better with, which is an interesting layer.
Yeah, true. I can see that. I would like to think that, well, I guess it's similar to coaching, where like old coaches, it's like, okay, it's my way. We're doing it this way. And then we used to think I'm just a visual learner. Mm-hmm. No, I can't hear it, But that's definitely not the case. You can see it, you can hear it, you can read it. It might all work for you. And I mean, like you said, I am going to repeat what you just said. We learn in a multitude of different ways. There's just a way that maybe feels a little bit better to us. For me, if I'm trying to conceptualize something in my brain, I would really like to see a figure of it. And I think that might work well, but maybe for, I don't know, like memory's sake, if you're studying for a test or something like that, then you might want to read it a few times or I don't know. Listen to it.
Right.
So we'll toss it back over. I feel like me and Seth are going back and forth now, but we'll toss it back over to Mike and Sam here, down a different rabbit hole, kind of related. But Seth, you alluded to coaches taking a little bit more responsibility to be adaptable to whoever it is that they're coaching. Teachers being a little bit more adaptable to whoever it is they're teaching. I think common now, but maybe not as common back then. The goal, the mission is a common goal and mission to make progress, to teach, to coach, maybe even on a team level, it's to reach this success, whether that's a sales room, whether that's, a lawyer's office, whether that's a firm, I guess would be a better term, but whatever team you're on, having a common goal that everybody's moving towards is a joint effort. But when we talk my job, their job, we often might shell the blame out. They weren't ready to learn. Like they did this, this, and this. It was not conducive to the success that we have. And that's kind of imposing, roles, regardless of if you're in that coach or if you're in that student role. Like, are you pointing the finger? Are you pushing the blame off there? What is the role of a learner in all of this?
That's a good question. In my opinion, I think the role of the learner is to be a challenger in the most positive way. If Nick, if you and Seth are teaching myself and Sam, right, our job is to, in some way, convey that we have, one, received the message that you are teaching to us, but at the same time, challenging you to better deliver the message in a way that, again, we can understand and digest. And so it's like, okay, I understand the point that you're trying to make, but it's about 85 to 90% loaded for me. Help me fill in the gaps of this last 10%. And then once we start filling in those gaps, kind of like Seth brought up, you start asking why. Right? So why is this happening? Well, what does that lead to? How does this work for fill in the blank? So I think that the goal of the learner, and this is also speaking as from experience as a coach, is I want my athletes to challenge me. I want them to ask me, why are we doing this? What is the benefit that I'm going to get from this? When can I expect to see results if I do this? Plus, fill in the blank. What is my result then? Because it then challenges me to keep growing. I can't tell you how many times I have no problem telling somebody, you know what, that's a good question. I don't have the answer for that. Let me get back to you. Let me go look it up. And immediately I go and I'm doing research and I'm trying to figure out, okay, why is this happening? Why do they feel this way? If there's a run I have them do, a workout in the weight room, whatever it is, a lot of times I try to do those things before asking them to do them so I can have a response. But if I don't for some reason, then I will absolutely go and try to figure it out and then be able to answer their question. So to wrap that all up, I definitely think it is to be a challenger in the most positive way.
I love that. And I agree. Like most of the time when I have athletes who challenge me and question things, I respect them a lot more because I like when they're willing to ask questions. Now, I'm going to kind of go old school and tie the two together. I think respect is the most important role of the learner as well. You have to have respect for the teacher. Because they're in that position for a reason, right? I got hired as a coach. I'm making the decisions. Having a certain level of respect is important. But I think the servant leadership point that I think Mike made at the end there, being a servant leader, being willing to do the things that you're going to show. Don't ask kids to do things that you're not willing to do yourself. Like that's really important for me as well. So the role of the learner is to be respectful, be open, but also be willing to push back, I think is my biggest point. So.
Yeah, I think, and Sam said something that sparked a thought for me when he, I'm missing it right now. Hang on. Let me get it back. What was your first point, Sam?
Respect. A little bit of respect.
Right, it was right before respect.
What did I say?
Dang, I'm losing it. It was when they asked, when you said when they ask you why or they want to understand more, that to me shows investment, right? You say you respect those. You respect those who ask those questions and who want to better understand. And I think, again, that as from a learning standpoint, that shows investment, right? That shows that you want to be here, that you want to be a part of this. You want to grow yourself. So what you said without saying it, but I think that investment piece is huge. It's huge for people who are learning. Like, and it's okay to not be invested in it, but help me. If you're not going to be invested in it, I'd rather you tell me early, like, I appreciate you teaching me this and showing me this, but this may not be important or won't be as of great of use to me as it may for somebody else. Like, and that's totally fine to tell somebody that so they know, all right, let's move on and find something that does work for you in this situation so I can be invested and I can tie it in. Like, again, it goes back to teaching those learning styles and finding out how people learn best.
Yeah, I don't want to.
I'd like to add a layer to this.
Hang on. So can I add one quick thought? No, I know you're itching. I know. Yeah, I'll get it to you in a second. But one thing I want to add to that is the reason I love what you said, Mike, is the respect piece goes both ways, right? So when someone is willing to tell you, like, hey, this doesn't matter to me, I like that they have the respect, and I have the respect for them to be like, that's fine. Like, I understand you. I hear where you're coming from. I think that piece is really important as well. Sorry, Seth. Go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off. But.
Yeah. Yeah.
No worries. I would just like to add another layer to it in the sense that I think the role of a good learner, is also to feel freed enough to like take action. So in sport, for instance, as a coach, like you have your preseason where you're learning, like you're getting your kids to learn, your athletes to learn, but then you have the first game. It's not like at the first game, like everything is figured out and they're professional athletes now. No, you get them to a good level to then go to the first game, and then the first game ends however it does. And then you go back to practice. There's still practice for the rest of the season. And in those practices, you learn more about yourself. So essentially what I'm trying to say is that you don't need to figure it out completely before you can then say like, okay, I've mastered this. I don't think learning is the same thing as mastering. And so I recently had an experience, and this was not athlete related, but I had the opportunity to like teach a class of research methods in front of like 200 kids. And boy, was I was very nervous. I mean, I've never taken like a teaching course before. Like, I don't know how to teach. I've seen a lot of people teach before, but this is my way of learning like what might make a good teacher, and then into action before I've like officially felt like I've learned this skill, I've mastered this skill, is putting it to action. Now I've had this experience and I've learned from it, and hopefully the next time I get this opportunity that I can take action again and then learn from that experience, and then so on and so forth. Good learners take action as well.
Yeah, that's good.
I'm going to throw you another layer here. Another indirect message I'm picking up from you guys. Correct me if I'm wrong, but even so, the student is engaged, right? Engagement is high. They're taking action. They're challenging. They show respect. In sports, the analogy of having a game and then going back to practice implies not only that the athletes have more to learn, that the team members have more to learn, but that the leader has things to learn, right? Otherwise, the game would have gone exactly as planned. Why play the game?
Right.
And I don't know how much we do that in other scenarios. Like in work, how often is it that the leader or the subject matter expert on whatever training is being run is open to the idea that I don't have all of this figured out? You know, Mike talked about being willing to say like, hey, I don't have the answer to that. That's a great question, but I'll find it out. How much do you see that with, I guess, other trainings? And I think the answer goes down from sports, and it's an implied implication. But yeah, that was interesting. I also have another one for you guys. This is fresh off. I threw this training together, more books that I haven't read, but have gotten summaries on. I'm just really good at getting summaries to books. But the Ideal Team Player is an older one. It's by Patrick Lencioni, I think, like early 2000s. Actually, no, his first book is that, which is The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. I'll get to that in a second. His second one was like 2015, 2016.
That's a really
the
good
Ideal
book.
Team Player.
It's a really good book.
Mm-hmm. Same guy. He continued all his stuff. And he says that the ideal team player, the ideal learner, and this is for successful teams. If you're not a successful team, I don't know how this applies, but is smart. Not smart in the sense of intelligence, but in the sense of you can read a room and you know how the room reads you. And so you're aware of what is happening and you're aware how other people are going to act and interact. Second one is hungry. Shout out to Mike for hitting this at the beginning of the episode. I've been waiting for a time to bring it up, but he says that is number 2. So you're looking for more. There's more to do, more to learn, more responsibility. This is what I think the past generations, and I think fuels his research, but this is what they looked for, is like, you're hungry, you're going to do, and that's the responsibility of the learner in the old style of teaching. Yeah. I don't think you necessarily need it right now, but for the ideal team player, that's what you would look for, right? And then the last one is humble. And how this one was explained to me is a spectrum where you have arrogance on one side and then self-doubt and criticism on the other side. And so humble's actually the middle. Because if you are so criticizing yourself to the point where you can't accept anything, like complimentary things that are coming your way, you're not in the middle. You're over here, right?
Yeah.
And that's not conducive to team success either, because you're doubting yourself. And in the training, I went to that, and then I went to the dysfunctions of a team, which are loosely status or ego, low standards, ambiguity, artificial harmony, and absence of trust. More or less, you're not bringing issues to the core. You're not challenging. You're not respecting. You're not doing a lot of things you guys said. And you're also not monitoring or measuring where you're at. There's a lot of, not my job. I don't care. Like, this doesn't seem important, which contrasts with the idea that I think we all just hit on, which is that the highest predictor of like performance in teams, specifically in the workplace, but in a lot of places this translates pretty well, is psychological safety, which is that idea of challenging and being unafraid to ask questions and provide feedback. Like, you're not fearing that whoever's leading is coming down on you, which I don't know. I think that has a big piece. And that, I think, flips my answer to our original question to the classic psych. It depends. If I want to teach the person to fish or bring dinner to the table, what can I get more engagement out of? I think that's my answer. I'll go with whatever I can get more engagement from. If I can get it from an individual and the scenario lends itself to an individual, I'm going to do that and bring the dinner to the table, one person. Or, if I can teach, do it at a group setting, do it at an individual setting, then I'll do that if the engagement's high.
That's not a bad answer. I like the way I kind of see where you went with that.
To add something to that as well, I think the answer could also be like, which way is going to make this person like fish on their own, in the future? Because like when you take classes, like you take that class for a few months and then you hope that person can continue on with what they learned for the rest of their life. If you're a coach, like if you teach them in their youth, like they go to the next person, like their skills don't drop off. And then the next coach comes and then they build them back up and then they drop off again to then go to the next level. But even in like sports psychology, we want to teach them these skills and then we want them to not need us anymore. Also in counseling. Like we want them to talk about their feelings and their experiences, and then hopefully they can learn something from us and then not need us anymore. I think, which of these, is it teaching them how to fish or just giving them what they need? Which one is going to make them successful, whatever that measure of success is for their future on their own?
I love that. Yeah, right now, that's a good quote from me. But Mike, Sam, if we circle back to that original question, have thoughts shifted? Any new epiphanies?
I can't say. So to pick a side, I would say no. I am still going to choose the side of teaching someone to fish and picking the person who is hungry, because in my mind, the person who is hungry is going to be engaged, right? You'll get the most engagement from them. They will give you the feedback that you're looking for. Again, like if I'm gonna try to tie this all together with a pretty bow on it here. So you get the engagement, you get the person who asks why, you get the person who challenges you, you get the person who maybe wants to lead others, because they start to realize that all of these things blend together, right? If I am taught to fish and I am hungry, like I need to eat, I then become more creative. And I think, what if I teach Nick to fish and Seth to fish and Sam to fish and maybe 2 other people, and now we share our meals, right? Now I'm eating from 5 different places versus just one place. So in my head, I'm still teaching a fish. I'm teaching somebody to fish, and I want them to be able, like Seth said, like, you may not need me anymore. Maybe you can branch out and you can teach other people to fish, and that in turn comes back to feed you.
I mean, I guess I'll kind of wrap it up. I guess for me, the coach me would stick kind of in the same vein as Mike. I'm still going to lean towards teaching, teach the person how to fish versus just giving them the fish. But I think it's more about, even if they don't learn how to fish, if they just learn patience or they just learn how to be present in the moment or whatever it is, when I'm teach them anything like that, to me, giving someone life skills, like when I coach my football players, I could care less about our record. Like, it doesn't matter to me. I don't care if we win or lose. If they walk away from that as good men and they understand what it takes to be a leader and be a good person, that is way more important. And if that was taught to them through the vein of football, if it was fishing that taught them that, but they learned those other lessons along the way, I guess that's more important than just giving them the ability to be a good football player, be a good fit.
Yeah.
That's a phenomenal way to wrap up and also lead us into our classic. What's one thing you're taking away from this conversation and would like to apply a little bit more the next week for yourself? And for those listening, join us, think about it, come up with an answer, pause it. I don't know, whatever you want to do. Well, join us.
I'll start. I always have so many things to say, so I'm going to go back to this book, Start With Why. I'm so sorry. I know I brought this book up so many times. But I think what I've found myself doing, like especially since this comprehensive exam experience, when you put yourself, especially in uncomfortable situations where a lot of learning happens or you're being taught something, in this case, with teaching someone how to fish, is like, why am I doing this to myself? I mean, that sounds like really bad, but like, why am I doing this? What am I gaining from this experience? I think asking yourself those questions and understanding why you're in the room, if you're going for a degree, why am I even on the football team in the first place? Well, I want to learn what hard work is like. I want to be a good football player, whatever the case might be. I think just asking yourself why is what I'm taking away from this.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I think to tie off of that, for me, Nick, the point you brought up about self-reflection in sports, even coaches, I don't think do a great job, or at least personally, I think we don't do a great job of self-reflecting at times. So I'm going to do hopefully a better job of looking a little more inward at times, trying to watch film, maybe figure out what I can fix with the team, maybe look at some of the things I do and some of my teaching styles. And also, I'm going to go back and question every phrase I've ever heard in my life, because now I have to think about each one, fishing and burning bridges and stuff. So
you could look at burning bridges as a way to make sure that people can't catch you. If you're making some progress over there, you don't want them.
Burn the boats, right? Just like David Goggins. Burn the boats. I'm sorry, Mike.
Do you have one, Mike?
I was going to ask you if you had one first. I'll go
I have one as well. Yeah, I can take it. I'm going to run with Seth's teach them what will lead them to fish on their own. I think particularly in a lot of the teaches that we do as a program, and especially, our office, I can speak to a little bit more, but we are so caught up in making sure that our content is good and that we're delivering exactly what people need to know and go into the nuts and bolts of everything that they're doing. I had this thought earlier this week. This conversation has flushed it out way more, but I was thinking about that. How much information are we actually packaging into an hour teach? And do I think there's more information, less information, and more prep or less prep than a 15-minute TED Talk? And I was of the belief that 15-minute TED Talk probably has more prep and more information, and they can do it in 15 minutes. Granted, they've probably taught a little bit more than me, but that shouldn't be an excuse. Why can't I figure out how to make a shorter product that gives time back to people, which should increase buy-in from the people, because I'm not, rambling too much. And can I do that more? Can I just focus on the takeaways and say, hey, if this works, come back and see me. If it doesn't work, that's okay. Carry on with your life. I didn't waste an hour today, something like that.
Totally fair. I'm going to take this from a very, very broad approach of what I'm going to take away. And it may seem shallow, so maybe I can get us to tread in a little deeper water here, but it's simply to embrace the challenge, and not the challenge that you walk into. Like you can see it coming, you recognize where you're going, and you can see the obstacles that are coming towards you. Embrace the challenge that is brought to you, right? We talked a lot about being leaders, teaching people to fish, or is it better to have or bring the food to the table? when you embrace that challenge that is brought to you, and you allow people inside of your mind, essentially, I think it creates a better leader, better relationships, a better atmosphere where everybody can grow. So for me, and it's something that I try to practice frequently, and I'm 10 years older to the oldest 10 years older. So even a bigger gap for some of the kids I coach. There's a significant age difference between us, but that doesn't keep me from allowing them to challenge me, right? I think it builds that respect of he's listening. He wants our input. We feel as if we are adding value to something that we are invested in. So embrace that challenge that's brought to you. Do yourself a favor and welcome it in. And in turn, I hope it makes you a better leader, husband, wife, father, mother, brother, sister, aunt, uncle, like whatever it is. It could just be what your job at work. Take those things and run with it.
Love that. I also have a quote for you that might tie in there nicely for you, Mike.
Drop it.
Agreeing to disagree shouldn't be the end of the conversation. It should be the start of a learning opportunity.
Absolutely.
If they're on the other side, if they're bringing you that challenge, you probably know less about their side than yours. So learn why they're on that side, but don't end the conversation because you don't agree on something.
That's good. All right, Nat, you got to clip it right there. Like that needs to be the end of that episode. Mic drop. That was it. I love it.
We are wrapping up for today. But yeah, appreciate both of you guys for hopping on. As always,
Absolutely.
Anybody who made it this far, any comments, any questions, any engagement that you've got for us, we are happy.
Send it. We want it. Right. Bring it to us. We welcome it.
And if you made it this far, as always, like, comment, subscribe, do your thing. It's free.
It's free. Right. That's it. Tell men in mind. Season 2, episode 5. We out. We appreciate y'all. Peace.